So as we go through this idea of walking the path, of following the steps of Christ, it's just a different way of saying discipleship, of saying taking that journey that God calls us to make. Because when we become Christians, God calls us to partner with him in ministry. And so he has a mission that he started. He came to earth to redeem creation. And so when we follow Christ, he calls us to partner with him in that redemption of creation. Now, the Bible uses a lot of different language like this, that we're co-heirs, or that we, do different things alongside him, that we're part of the body, of his body. But these are all different metaphors talking about us becoming more of the creation, more of the person that God has created us to be. Now, Paul uses one of those metaphors in 1 Corinthians, and this is our verse that we're going to springboard off of today. So if you got your Bible, we're going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and this is what he says, and it's talking about self-discipline, and he says this, it says, "Do you not know," this is verse 24, "do you not know that in a race all runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone competes in the games, goes into strict training. They do not get a crown that will, they do get a crown that will not last, but we do it for a crown that will last forever. Therefore, do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize." Paul says no one runs on accident. And I'd take it further, and I would say that no one wins a race on accident. Never in the history of the world has anybody won a race, crossed the finish line first, and be like, oh, what did I just do? Like, nobody has ever lined up for a marathon just like, I have no idea what's going on. Oh, there, everybody's running. I'll just run. Let's go. Unless they're being chased, right? Like, it just doesn't happen. No one is going to run a marathon, and not even if they have to get there, they have to mean to enter before they can run it. Not even to win. Like, nobody's going to do it on accident. Nobody will do this without training at all. Some people have tried, and it's just a horrible result. I actually watched a video where a guy with no training ran a marathon one day, and at the end, he's like, I need the hospital. And they're like, well, what do you need the hospital for? He's like, I don't know. Like, it was so much pain on his face. It was really entertaining because it wasn't me. But a while back, my wife and I got into running. Actually, my wife got into running. And when she was pregnant with our third child, so this is while she was pregnant, ran 3 half marathons. And I remember standing, and I just saw this video the other day. It popped up on my memories on Facebook. As I was standing at the finish line with my other 2 kids, cheering them on, is actually with Shirley and Tony in Laguna Beach, I think. And they were crossing the finish line, and my wife's got her big, baby belly, her bump there, and she's just waddling across the finish line. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. My unborn child has completed more half marathons than I have. And that shame caused me to start training and to start running. And so I signed up for a mud run, and which is, if you don't know, is just where you run through obstacles and mud courses, and they never tell you about the amount of chafing that happens in these runs, right? But I ran that, and it was like, just a 5K, like 3 miles, and so I just started training. And so I started training because I was like, okay, I need to run 3 miles. How do I do that? Well, I just start running, and when I get to 3 miles, I stop. And that was my training, right? That's like, okay, just go for it. What I came to understand is that when you're training for a race, training is more than just running. At first, that's the start, is you start running. You got to start somewhere. Just one foot in front of the other, get out the door, start trying things. But as your distance get larger, or if you want to get better, training becomes more intense and more detailed. I mean, at first it's just run a race, but then it's just run that distance. But then if you start looking at how you do it, there's different distances that you run each day to practice. And then if you actually get into it and you start following a program, they tell you actually have to rest on certain days. There's specific ways to rest so that you can make sure your body is prepared for that long race. And then if you get to an elite level or ultra marathons, there's like diets that go along with this marathon training. And not just like, yeah, you need a bunch of carbs the night before, but it's actually like you need this amount of calories at this time each day and this type of calorie. And it's this intense training that is more than just running. Something that should be so intuitive. There's so many nuances and details and types of things that go into it to make you a successful marathoner or a successful runner. Now, being a Christian is similar in some ways, and Paul makes that connection. Don't run a race just like somebody aimlessly. Instead, train to win. Now, discipleship is more than just going to church. A lot of times when people first become Christians, they think, okay, being a Christian means that I'm busy on Sunday mornings, but everything else is pretty much the same, right? And so kind of like my first approach to that race was, well, I just need to be able to run 3 miles, so I'm going to get out the front door and just go do it. And so some people put this equation of like, okay, I'm a Christian because on Sundays I show up at church. I remember I was talking to somebody one time about her weekend. I was like, hey, how was your weekend? What'd you do? She's like, oh, I went to church on Sunday, had to represent the family. And in her mind, showing up around once a month and saying the right things or shaking the hands, singing the songs, and she was the only one in her family, but that meant she represented her family, and that made her family Christians. And it was this like, okay, well, sit down for a second, Emily, let's talk about this, right? It's like, wait a minute. And so it was kind of the shock to me that a lot of people believe this idea of like, if I show up on Sundays and, I get in the tub that one time and then I just keep coming back and then I just hope and wait for Jesus to return. And that's what being a Christian is, right? But the gospel is so much bigger than just hoping and waiting. Some people think Christianity is, okay, I've accepted Christ. Now we just wait till he gets back when he comes and rescues me from earth. Like that's the thing that I'm here for. I got my hope set in him. I hope he comes back soon, and I'm just going to sit here and wait. But the gospel is so much bigger than that because God calls us into co-heirs or partners to run the race faithfully. He gives us a great mission. Go into all the nations, making disciples, teaching them, baptizing them in my name, teaching them everything I've taught. He gives us this mission that we're supposed to do. I heard about this church in Florida that's in a retirement community, and so everybody there is 55 plus. There's nobody younger than that. And one of their reoccurring themes, my friend went there, is you're not done till you're dead. You're not done till you're dead. Because I've met many retired people. It seems like there's 2 types of people that when they retire. One, they're like, how did I ever work? I'm so busy right now. And then there's other people that I am so bored, I have nothing to do. And it's almost this mentality of quitting, and I'm starting this new life where I just get to do whatever I want. Now, I know that's not for everybody, and everybody has different ways of approaching it. But this church recognized that so many people just kind of seek themselves in retirement only. And their desire was to say, there's more to it. You're not done until you're dead. Because God calls us to something so much bigger, no matter how old we are. God calls us to be co-heirs, and that means, yes, we get the inheritance, the prize, but we also have that responsibility of being a daughter and a son of God. And God's mission is to redeem earth, redeem all his creation from sin that damaged it. And so we are called to that. Now, learning how to do this is called discipleship. It's walking in the way of Christ, following the way that he does. And that's why we have the New Testament. It's because it was Paul and Peter and James writing these letters to the church saying, this is the way that we need to move forward. These are the steps that we need to take. This is how you live once you become a Christian. This is what a true disciple does. Now, a lot of times, because it's written in translation, we have struggles sometimes figuring out how to take this and put it into our walk when we walk out those doors. And I understand that. And sometimes, too, we can be stagnant in our faith and we can feel like, I'm just not growing. I don't know what God is doing, or I don't know what's changing in my life. And that's normal. That's okay. What I would like to do is kind of compare this to a checkup. Like when you go to the doctor, you don't go to the doctor all the time because it's wrong, but you want to go and assess how your body's doing so that you can make corrections and choose what's wrong. In your spiritual life, it's good to pause and look, okay, how am I doing in these different areas of discipleship? What am I doing? What are the habits that we should be having? And how am I doing in those things? Now, the Bible has things that I've kind of compartmentalized into just 7 areas. I picked 7 just because it's easy to remember that naturally, and so they subdivide in some of those. But these are the 7 habits that a disciple should be putting into practice. The first one is a disciple should be studying Scripture. 2 Timothy 3:16 says, all Scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. So if we're to follow in Christ's steps, if we're to mature and become the disciple he's made us to be, we need to know his word. We need to know what it says in here, because this is one of the primary ways that God speaks into our life and gives us instruction. And what I love about this Bible is that you can read the same passage that you read last year and understand it in a totally different light. The ancient rabbis had a term for this they called turning the gem. If you would take a ruby or a gem that was a cut stone and you hold it up to the light and you just slightly turn it, all of a sudden all these different colors and sparkle and shine are revealed because it's just slightly looked at from a different angle. And so they say when you took a verse and you studied it and you looked at it, it was as if you were turning a gem and seeing new things, new ways to understand the Scripture each time. And so the Bible also is living and active. And so as we're in it, it changes us because we're changed. And so it moves us and changes us. So it's so important for a disciple to be studying Scripture. One of these, and these are not in an order list of importance. These are just 7 things that we need to be putting into practice. The next one that I have is fellowship. Fellowship is one of those kind of churchy words. Basically, the only where we ever read it outside of church is in Lord of the Rings, right? Fellowship of the Ring. But that's a perfect example. You know, if you're not familiar with the movie or the books, it's this group of unlike beings, these residents of Middle Earth, hobbits and elves and dwarves and men, they have nothing really in common, live totally different lives, and yet they come together for a single purpose, and they journey together to accomplish that purpose. When we fellowship, we come together with other people that may not be like us, and yet we journey together to become more Christ-like. And you have to have a fellowship. The Bible gives us examples of this. The first one is Hebrews 10:25. The writer of Hebrews instructs us, says this, and let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the day approaching. And so they say together, you need to meet together to encourage one another. Because I don't know about you, but some days, when I get to the end of the week, when I get to Friday, Saturday, whatever your week ends, it feels like I got run over by a truck. Just life will beat you up. And I need that refreshment. I need that encouragement. I need to carry one another's burdens, each other. I need to be able to be an encouragement to other people. One of my favorite things a few weeks ago is somebody came into church on Sunday morning and they just said, wait a minute, who are this person? They named somebody. And I don't know who it is, because they sent us a card telling us that they hope we get well. The couple had been sick, and so I had to point out who had made the card for them. And it brought me such great joy because I was nowhere involved, but I noticed somebody in our congregation that sits in this aisle knew somebody over here was sick, and so got their address, made sure to write them a card just to encourage them. And I got to stand back and see ministry happen. And it was a blessing to me to see that happen. And so I was encouraged by that fellowship of other people. And so it is so important. In Acts chapter 2, we see the church start in Acts chapter 2. Peter preaches a sermon at Pentecost, and 3,000 people are baptized. In Acts 2:42, it says this about the first church. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and breaking of bread and prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs that were performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property, possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes, and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. And so we see this picture that God, when he forms the church, starts having them live life together. They were eating together. They were caring for one another's needs. They were studying together and praying together. They were fellowshipping together. And these are the things that we are called to do, to care for one another and to meet together and do this. One of my favorite illustrations of this is simply a campfire. I don't know about you, but one of the most relaxing places to be is around a campfire. And just that mesmerizing flame and just staring into it, right? And so you've got your campfire in front of you, and maybe you got your s'mores or your hot dog there, whatever it is, and you're cooking it, but there's all those coals, right? And when you're cooking your s'more, you want to get over the coals, not the big live flame, because you don't want to flame and mallow, right? And so you're toasting that, and you get those coals. Now, what happens if you take one of those coals out of the fire and you set it on the side? What happens to that coal? It cools off, doesn't it? In the same way, if we're removed from a fellowship, if we're removed from the church by our own choice or by circumstances, if we're not with other Christians, we lose that flame. We lose that fire for God. It's just the natural way of things in the world. And so it's so important for us to go back and to be part of a group, because when you put that same coal that's cooled back in the fire, the other coals will heat it back up and get it going again. And again, with fellowship, we need to have that in our life. A disciple that is following God's purpose is one that is going to be in that fire, in the midst, so it can warm others and so it can be warmed by others, so that it can fellowship and encourage one another. One of the things that the Bible tells us that we need to do is to be giving. In the Acts chapter 2, it said that they were all sharing and giving as one had need. Also in 1 Corinthians 16, Paul gives a very detailed explanation of how it should happen. And he instructs the Corinthian church, now about the collection for the Lord's people. And if you don't know, the Corinthian church, Corinth was on this isthmus, into this peninsula, and they had basically kind of like the Panama Canal went through there. And so they were a hub of shipping and everything like that. And so it was a very rich, very wealthy city. And the city of Jerusalem, the Christians there, were being shunned and really having a hard time financially. And so the other churches that were well off were taking a collection to take care of them. And so this is the collection that Paul's talking about. Now about the collection for the Lord's people. Do what I told the Galatian churches to do. On the first day of every week, each one of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with your income, saving it up so that when I come, no collections will have to be made. And then it goes on that I will take that with letters and we'll take it to the church there. But a couple things that Paul instructs them to do when you give. He says to be thoughtful about it, to think about this each week. He wanted them over and over, not just one time, but to over and over be thoughtful about what they were giving to the church, to this other body. And so it was a routine thing that he was wanting them to get involved in. Also, it was in proportion to the person's income. And so it wasn't give till it hurts, it was give according to what you can. And so Paul gives them this instruction in that. Now, if you know my heart at all, my heart is never about trying to just get money from you. If you're new here or you just, preachers are always talking about money, Jared's bringing that up. If you feel that way, then I would invite you to give, but not to hear. If you think I'm just after your money, please give, because I think God requires it, but I'll help you find somewhere else to give to, because I think it's more important, not for our church to get that money, but for your spiritual well-being, for you to give somewhere else or be giving, because it is important for us to make sure that we're giving of what God has given us. And something that Jesus talked about a lot, and it's over and over. And he says, where your treasure is, your heart will be also. And so it is important for us, even if you're not giving here, to be giving somewhere. And if you need help finding that, I would love to help you figure that out. All right, one of the other things is worship. It is important and extremely important for us to be worshiping. Now, worship can kind of break down into two different ways. The first one is personal worship. Personal worship. In Romans chapter 12, 1 through 2, it says, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your body as living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." So he says, to truly have a spiritual act of worship, is to offer your body as a living sacrifice. What does that mean? Exactly. I mean, it means to be putting God's will before your own. Is to know what God has to do, or God wants you to do, and know what you want to do, and choosing his will over yours. One of the greatest prayers that somebody taught me was just to pray simply, "God, help me want what you want more than what I want. God, help me want what you want more than what I want." Basically praying, "God, change my heart so I desire the things that you want more than the things that my body, my flesh wants." And so with that, offer your bodies a living sacrifice. Now, the problem is with living sacrifices is they try and crawl off the altar. Right? A regular dead sacrifice, it's not going anywhere. But a living sacrifice will be trying to crawl off the altar. And so this is something that we have to remind ourselves to do, is to get back up on there and pray that. You may have been a Christian for years, and this is still something that you might remind yourself. This is still something that I have to remind myself. Pray that, "God, let me want what you want more than want what I want." Now, the other half of worship, the other part of worship, is corporate. It's important for us to come together and worship as a body, together as a group. Psalm 95 says it just beautifully. It says, "Come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout aloud to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before him with thanksgiving and extol him with music and song. For the Lord is great, the great King above all gods. In his hand are the depths of the earth, and the mountain peaks belong to him. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. Come, let us bow down and worship. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is God, and we are the people of his pasture, the flock under his care." So God calls us to worship together. Now, worship is simply saying to God that you are God and you deserve my praise. You are worthy of my awe, of simply showing awe and praise to God. Now, we do this in many ways. When we come together, music isn't the only way that we worship. We can worship through learning. We can worship through giving, through sharing, through encouragement, through fellowship. By living the right life, we are worshiping God. So often, though, we do it with music because it helps us through song to all be of the same mind. When you're singing those songs, when you're reading those words and singing those, you're doing it alongside other people. It's one of the few times where your thoughts are the same as those as people around you. That we together are worshiping God. And there's something uniquely special about that, to being of the same mind as other believers. And the other reason, I think, is because I think music speaks to our soul at a different level than other things. There's something about music and the way that we're created that speaks to us at a different level. Now, the next thing, number 5 here, is evangelism. Evangelism is a fancy church word that just means telling people about the love you have for Christ. It's right here in 1 Peter 3:15. And on your outline it says 2 Peter 3:15. That was my mistake. It's 1 Peter 3:15. It says, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give a reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." Now, I love this passage because if you break it down, there's a few things going on. It says, always be ready to give an answer to everyone who asks you for the reason, the hope you have. So first of all, it assumes that you're living in such a way that people will understand you have hope in God. Then the other thing, it says, give an answer for why you have that hope. Now I love this because it doesn't say you need to know your theology. You need to have this down. You need to know everything about the book of Revelation. You need to do this thing. It doesn't say any of that. It just says, provide your reason. Why is it you believe? And the thing is, if it's your story, it can't be wrong. If you have it the way why you believe it, and you tell people that, they can't refute that because it's your story. It's what you believe. And so I love this passage in 1 Peter. And then he closes it, but do this with gentleness and respect. So as you share this, do it with other people. This is just like, to me, this is recliner evangelism. Like it's just laid back, hey, I'm going to take it easy. I just want to share with you. And by recliner, I mean it's simple, it's easy, it's comfortable. It's not getting out in front of people in a way that is abrasive or anything like that, but a way that's just, hey, this is what I believe. Let me tell you about it. And it's when other people see the hope in your life that you have. All right, another thing that we need to be doing as disciples is we need to be serving. We need to be serving. Now, Jesus set this example in John 13. At the Last Supper, he says, when he'd finished washing their feet, remember the story, after the supper, he gets down and he puts a towel around his waist, and gets water, Jesus, and goes to his disciples, and he washes each of their feet. And then he gets done. When he finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes, and he returned to his place. Do you understand what I've done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightfully so, because that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should wash one another's feet. I have set for you an example, that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. So Jesus, not necessarily instructing us to wash one another's feet, because honestly, if you tried to wash my feet, it's a good way to get a quick kick to the face. Like, I am so ticklish on my feet that it's just going to happen. But it's a way, Jesus said, to serve them in the most humble way possible. This job of washing feet, of course, was the lowliest servant's job. And yet Jesus, Lord and teacher, did it for these disciples. We are more like Christ than any other time when we are serving one another. Now, I would love for you to be serving here. I would love for you to be here and come and you've got some amazing ministry going on at Valley Christian Church. And so, honestly, selfishly, I just want to be able to be like, Valley Christian Church is awesome. Look what's going on here. And that's totally selfish. But I want you to be serving, even if it's not here. We've got one person that's attending here that's starting support groups for trauma people who've gone through horrendous trauma. We've got people that do amazing things that, like I said, make cards and beautiful cards and send them to people. We've got people that will take special care of people, take them out to lunch and deal with, there's amazing ministry that's happening behind the scenes that don't have a full ministry program. Those are great sometimes, but they can also be strangling. But these people in our congregation, I love hearing these stories about the simple ways that they are serving one another. And so we need to be serving one another and also serving people that aren't in this congregation. Maybe you've got a neighbor that you need to reach out to serve, because that is one of the greatest ways for them to see the hope that you have in your life that Peter talked about. And so we need to be serving because Christ set that example, and we are most like him when we are serving one another. All right. Now the last thing here is prayer. We need to be praying. Now, it was tough for me to find a verse on this, not because it was hard to find a verse, but it was hard to narrow it down. There are so many verses on how we should pray. And I went with this one. Hebrews 4:16 said, "Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need." There are so many amazing verses on prayer, and Christ set the example for us to be praying. Christ daily he did it in a couple different ways. He was praying throughout the day, and Paul says it in Thessalonians, pray continually. or pray without ceasing in Philippians. And then Jesus set the example of pulling away from everything in his daily routine and setting aside a block time of prayer, a time of being just by himself and the Father. And so we have these examples of praying continually throughout the day, when you're driving, when you're going somewhere. One of the men I respected the most was an elder at the first church I worked for. And amazing to me, I heard him one time slip on the stairs as you're walking down some icy stairs, slip, and in midair just go, "Jesus, help me." And the shortest prayer in that before he hit the ground was able to get that out because he was so ingrained in him to continually being in prayer. And so this man was just an amazing guy that would do that. And so we need to be praying without ceasing. We need to set aside those times also that we are praying in those chunks of time. And so that we need to be communicating with God. God communicates us with several ways, through other people, through Scripture, but also through prayer. And so we need to take those time. And so all those different things that you have. Now, on your outline, if you've got an outline in front of you, on the left-hand side, there's little dashes by each one of those 7 things. What I would love for you to do is take that outline, and with those dashes, you don't have to do it now, but sometime this week, take a few moments and just sit down and think about each of those 7 things in your own life. And just on a scale of 1 to 10, honestly, where are you at in that area? Are you worshiping in your personal life? Are you worshiping corporate? When you come to church, are you able to actually worship God? Or are you focused on like, oh man, I can't believe that person's out of key, or look at this person over here moving, I can't believe they stand up and do that, or are you too distracted? And so maybe that's a way that you, in your life, you need to take a step forward and say, okay, I need to focus. I need to close my eyes, or I need to sit somewhere else, or I need to get over myself, or whatever it is. You know, when you're serving, are you maybe a 1 that you don't serve anything, buddy? That everywhere it's about you? Or are you doing really good? Like, yeah, actually I serve quite a bit. I'd probably say an 8, Jared. Or where is it? Prayer. You know, my prayer life right now, it's just, I barely talk to God. I'm so angry with him. And so right now you're a 2, and so you need to take your step and say, you know, I need to do this. So the first thing you need to do is ask, where am I? In these areas, where am I? Am I a 1? Do I really got a lot of improvement? Or maybe you're just a 1 because you've never done this. You're new to this Christian walk. Or are you a 10? You're doing great. I mean, 10, that's Jesus, so let's not say you're a 10, all right? So, but you're doing good. You're 8, you're 7, you're there. And then the question after that is what area or where do I need to grow? Where do I need to grow? So take one of those areas and pick one and say, okay, what's my plan? What am I going to do to take a step forward? What am I going to do to run the race? What am I going to do to beat my body till it's my slave and obeys me? Do I need to begin that prayer, God, help me want what you want more than I want? Or do I need to deny something? Or do I need to take this step forward? Because nobody runs a race. Nobody wins a race on accident. And so it's good to evaluate where you're at and where you need to be. Let's go ahead and pray. God, thank you for bringing us here tonight. Thank you for giving us this instruction, giving us your word so that we can know how to walk the path, that we can develop who we are into who you want us to be. Mold us, change us, move us, and God, with your energy, change us to the person you've created us to be. We just pray this in your Son's name. Amen.